Alright guys, we're back with some more Broly, this time the base DBS strength Broly EZA, another rainbow, another level 10 links, units whose hidden potential system is definitely a lot better this time around compared to the Super EZA LR, and another great addition fleshing out Golden Frieza and Gogeta's lead. So we have them on pretty much the exact same team. We've just shimmied off Carnival LR Tech Broly. We do have him on rotation immediately, which is great. Only next to Golden Frieza though, so we only have Prodigy's Shocking Speed and Fierce Battle active. But that is okay, and he's starting with a 477k attack stat, 202k defense. He's getting Key +1 and 260% attack and defense at the start of turn. Don't forget as well, when we do attack with 12 or more Key, which I'm pretty sure only procs once he supers, I could be wrong, he will gain 40% damage reduction and then another 20%, taking him up to 60% damage reduction when attacking with 2 or more orbs obtained. So very easy to get that full 60, but just to make sure I am right, I am going to shimmy him into slot 2, so we're not going to get to see him tank, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm pretty sure when you attack with 12 or more Key, Broly will need to super attack, or essentially attack first before the damage reduction actually kicks in. Attacks are also effective against all types for him. He also randomly changes Key spheres of a certain type to rainbow orbs, strength orbs excluded. And then also when attacking with 12 or more Key, he does gain 160 attack and defense on top of the 40% damage reduction. And when attacking with 2 or more orbs obtained, on top of the 20% damage reduction, will disable the enemy's guard and gain an extra 100% defense as well. He is getting 50% attack and defense every time he supers, which is very nice, a decent amount of stats to buff him out with. Also, when attacking with 6 or more orbs, which we did get, I think we got 7 in total, so we did trigger that. He gets an extra 100% attack, 17.5 milli on the attack stat. Not too bad, nothing too ridiculous. There's an additional taking him up to 18.8. To be fair, he does only have 3 links currently active, but 2 50% attack and defense raises with the 60% damage reduction is quite nice. But he does get a guaranteed additional super, which we saw him do there, as long as you do get 6 or more orbs. I do like the fact that you can get the extra 20% damage reduction purely by picking up 2 orbs. So unless you are facing an enemy that specifically orb changes and you get fairly unlucky, or you know, let me rotate you off. I'll wait to do the domain because I actually kind of want to link these two together because they do have different names, right? Yeah, what am I talking about? This one definitely isn't Wrathful, so yeah, we're all good. We are all good indeed. So you're kind of not guaranteed, but it's going to be very unlikely you don't get DBS base Broly's full 60% damage reduction unless you get really, really unlucky when it comes to orb placement. So most of the time you will have his full damage reduction, which is great because 60% is definitely a solid number to have. And then if the target enemy's HP does drop down to 80% or less when attacking, he will gain an extra 50% attack and defense, which I imagine Haba's gonna be at by the time we get to next turn, surely. Actually, I say surely, definitely. And then he'll have a 50% chance to crit as well, which is also very nice. And then if the target enemy does drop down to 50% HP or less when attacking, Broly will gain another 50% attack and defense and another guaranteed additional super. That's one of my only qualms with this DBS Broly, is because you're more often gonna have an enemy at 80% HP or below, and that's gonna happen quicker than 50%. Because by the time you hit 50%, not that it won't happen, but you're kind of going for the kill and it takes longer to get to. I would prefer the additional super to be part of the 80% or less, just because it's a bit more useful than, say, 50% chance to crit, considering he does have attacks effect against all types. I'm not saying the crit is useless. I just would prefer having the guaranteed additional to get the extra 50% attack and defense raise. So now that we've got the Super EZA LR Broly next to him, we do have a couple more links active. We do lose Prodigies, which I don't want to lose because that's 15% attack. So I'm actually going to do this. And we pretty much everything active aside from Berserker right now. So he's on a 588k attack stat, pre-super of course, and 261k defense, pre-super. And then not only that, the Super EZA LR Broly is giving base Broly that 26% attack and defense for all extreme class allies, which of course does last for 2 turns. So he's getting some support. We get him 7 orbs again, which means we do get the 100% defense raise, the extra 20% damage reduction to disable enemy's guard, then the extra 100% attack and guaranteed additional super. So at the moment, kind of on average, well, actually on average, because the 2 turns he's appeared, we've got it, we're picking up 6 orbs. On average, we are getting 6 orbs with DBS base Broly with his orb changing to rainbow orbs, which is perfect. Because again, it means you're getting all of those extra stats. 25.7 mil is definitely looking a lot better, especially when you consider the fact he does have a guaranteed additional right now. 27.66, also very, very nice. And a 50% chance to crit is in there as well. Another guaranteed additional because Cabba's down at 50% HP or less, so that means he also has the 50% attack and defense. All in all, 31.5, that must be the hidden potential system. All in all, a good amount of combined damage. I know he starts a little bit on the lower side, but let's not forget, DBS base Broly is a side EZA. So expecting him to pull out 40-50 mils, maybe close to 60-70 like the Super EZA LR, obviously isn't going to happen. So seeing him manage to pull out high 20s and then eventually 30s, especially when you consider the fact that is, again, 50% attack and defense each time. So all in all, that was 200% attack and defense raise. All in all together, with a 50% chance to crit, he does a decent amount of total damage. Again, especially for a Super EZA unit. Sorry, not a Super EZA, that's the LR. Especially a side EZA unit. So his damage output is looking fairly solid for a side EZA. Not to mention as well, a decent amount of extra defense coming his way, really fleshing him out. On top of the 60% damage reduction, we've also got him. So on paper, that's looking quite solid. I can't imagine he has crazy amounts of defense, even though we did get lucky and super attacked 4 times for the hidden potential system to pop. So while it is a decent amount of attack and defense, while we did get lucky with the RNG and super attack 4 times, which I'll take, I can't imagine he's going to have the most amount of defense to go with the 60% damage reduction. Not that I'm great when it comes to Dokkan maths, I'll be completely honest, because I'm not. I'm not an expert when it comes to the Dokkan maths. I have a very basic understanding of the way it works and just come up with estimations in my head. But I think you'll have a solid amount of defense, especially if you even super attack 3 times with 60% damage reduction, maybe even twice. I think maybe on paper, from the majority of normals in the game, I think he would be okay. Super attacks, probably not so much. So right now we have pretty much the same links active. Berserker only procs when we're at 50% HP or less, which I'm not going to lie, we're probably going to get to. I don't want this run to die out already, but I know for a full fact, because I've had him in a few times, and especially because he only has 515k defense, if Wrathful Broly gets super attacked, we die. Even with the active, I know Cabba does too much damage here. And I'm not done looking at DBS base Broly just yet. So I'd rather wait a little bit. But in terms of rotation, this is a very nice setup. Next to Wrathful Broly, he would actually be almost perfectly linked up with him. It's just we haven't lost enough HP to trigger Berserker. But very easy to link him on a team like this when you are surrounded by so many Broly units. The other thing I did forget to mention, which I think is so good, and I like the way Dokkan have set this up, is after delivering a final blow, Broly will recover your HP fully. There's no cap on it. There's no, limit on how many times you can do this. As long as the I keep saying super. As long as the side EZA base DBS Broly delivers the final blow, he will fully recover HP at the end of turn. Which I can't lie, just for the fact that he can do that is a big help to the team. Just naturally, because so many of us hop into difficult content, don't want to use items because of the pride, the Saiyan pride. And there's a whole thing and a stigma of, if you use items, you are trash. You are trash at Dokkan, okay? You're not allowed to use them, otherwise you are straight duty. you know, because there's that whole consensus, and obviously everyone wants a challenge. Everyone wants to do it in the most difficult way possible because it looks better, which it does, especially when it comes to content. You know, I get it. I understand. Because you don't use items, and I'll be real, this team doesn't have anyone who really heals like that. I mean, maybe in STR Broly with his revival, and that's if you bring him. But to have a full recovery in your back pocket, as long as you can set up the final blow at any time, I think is a good team utility to have. It covers the team very well. Now, what I did say during his details when we went through them, and I still stand by this, especially with all the kerfuffle when Strength Rose's EZA dropped years ago, delivering final blows can be finicky. You can set it up, but, you know, if some things don't go right, if you don't get certain RNGs, like maybe an additional from this unit or that unit or both, or maybe a unit doesn't hit a crit, or again, another one doesn't, you might miss the final blow specifically with DBS based Broly. But if you do manage to hit the final blow, as I said, having a full heal whenever you want, well, not really whatever you want, but constantly having a full heal in your back pocket if you can set up the final blow, as I said, is a great bit of team coverage for a team that, I'll be honest, doesn't have a lot right now. Like, there's some great units, but again, if you use STR Broly, because I'll be real, how difficult content is nowadays, he's kind of fading out of choice. You know, you still might bring him, but you're not running dual leads, so, you know, you're only going to get to see the domain up so often. Like, we don't have it active right now. You know, I could have forced this team to have the domain, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring a realistic kind of team setup. You know, some people, maybe a lot of you won't actually bring in STR Broly. You might bring him for the domain and the boost for like a couple turns, but considering you're not running dual leads, if you were to run Golden Frieza and Gogeta's team, you'll miss out. You'll end up missing out on that buff for a couple turns, which means, you know, as I said, the team doesn't have that much in terms of team utility, team coverage. And again, the KO applies to STR Broly as well. You have one at your disposal anyway. However, you might not even bring him on the team. We've got a little bit of support because of the Super EZA LR. You've got a very good stacker and a scouter when it comes to Wrathful Broly. You know, if you have him. You know, in this case, we got quite lucky with the revival. But that only lasts for one turn. So to have a full HP recovery at the end of turn, as long as you can set up a final blow. And again, this doesn't have a limit, by the way. This isn't a one or done type situation. Like, it doesn't say that in his kit whatsoever. It just says, after delivering a final blow, fully recovers HP at the end of turn. I think that's pretty sick. For a team that doesn't have the most, doesn't have the most, you know, team utility, team coverage, I think that's pretty sick to have. I said the only downside to me is, and this is just my opinion, you may disagree and that's completely okay, is quite a lot of the time, final blows or delivering a final blow of a unit specifically can be a little bit finicky, and you can easily miss out, or you can easily, you know, not get it if certain things don't go your way, like an additional, a crit, maybe a couple units additional critting. They can be a little bit finicky to set up. That is just my only asterisk with that, but I do like the idea of it. Just getting it may be difficult. And the one thing I also do like about it as well, to add on top of that, and this is just my opinions on final blows in general, that I know no one asked for, is the fact that, unlike, and as I said, Strength Rose is the main one that's given me PTSD when it comes to delivering final blows, they locked, like, stats, important things to make the unit perform better away under the final blow. I get the gimmick, I get why, you know, this pain makes me stronger, you know, those kind of things. You know, sometimes Dokkan likes to follow a gimmick, you know, it makes sense. I like those kind of things, it makes units unique. But locking stats behind that stuff, which is something a unit you want to get, kind of needs, or not even kind of, definitely needs to perform better. I like the fact that this base DBS Broly doesn't have that. Like, do you need to get the HP recovery? No. because it doesn't make DBS base Broly perform any better. It's not something he needs to perform better in any content. Would you maybe need it in a specific scenario? Yeah, of course. But do you necessarily need to get that active no matter what to make him perform better, or maybe get a crit, maybe get some additional dodge, damage reduction, something that, just, as I said, helps him perform better and is important to him performing better? No. You may need it in a run because you may need a full heal 100%. Obviously, that's very situational. But I like the fact that they didn't lock... I'm not going to bother this, by the way. I just like the fact that they didn't lock anything important behind the final blow. Something useful, but it's not something Broly needs. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I said, I know no one asks, but I like it when Dokkan doesn't do stuff like that and makes conditions really restrictive and locks things that units need to be better behind really annoying, really frustrating, or even finicky, as I've been saying, conditions. The only other thing I don't like about this Broly, which, I mean, this would have been in the game since his release, is, I don't really don't like it, it just doesn't help him, is he only has 4 categories. So there aren't many places where you're going to run this EZA, and as I said, he's looking like a solid EZA on paper. As I said, I don't know his exact stats by numbers. I do think the majority of normals in the game he should probably do okay with. I mean, he's been doing okay on this run, but, you know, the last 2 phases so far, he hasn't really been hit whatsoever. But again, 60% damage reduction, which doesn't seem a struggle to get. Guaranteed additional, 50% attack and defense raises at least twice. And I think majority of normals he'll be fine. You know, as a slot 3 unit, just to kind of be there to deal damage and be able to, like, withstand some of the harder enemies' attacks. Maybe not super attacks. I'm fine with that. You know, it fleshes out a category that really needed fleshing out and had loads of potential in Golden Freezer's and Gogeta's 220 lead. So I think he's a great addition at slot 3. I do think he has some very solid team coverage when it comes to the full HP recovery. Just kind of iffy to get it set up. And at least you never seemed, well, at least so far I haven't. I said, I think unless you get super unlucky, we are dead, but that's okay. And unless you get super unlucky with orb changing, you've always got that 60% damage reduction, which I think is really good. So overall, I think he's a solid side EZA. Like, just remember, he is a side EZA. So the amount of damage he can do on top of all the supers he does with 50% chance to crit, it's a good amount of total damage. I said defensively, I think normals he should be able to cope with his 60% damage reduction, which from that whole run, which I could have been lucky, but with the orb changing and only needed 2 orbs to get the extra 20%, I don't think you're ever going to struggle to really get unless you get really, really unlucky, which I hope never happens to any of you. I think he'll be okay. I think the super attacks are where it's going to be an issue, but again, he is a side EZA. Are we really expecting him in 2025 to tank like 4.5, 6 million plus attack stats? Probably not. And that is why I did give him as much dodge as I could give him while trying to kind of keep his hidden potential system balanced. I mean, when I do give him skill orbs, he's probably going to get more dodge as well. And that's to kind of combat and help with him not being able to tank supers. I think overall, he's pretty solid. I said the only thing that kind of hurts him on top of all of that is just the lack of categories. However, he does go on a very good 220 lead with all of these new units. Raffle Broly, Golden Freezer and Gogeta, the new Super EZA Broly, etc, etc. And he also does go on super bosses as well. So if you want to drop him on Rose's team, super bosses are starting to get a lot better as well already, and that's within a month to 2 months. So he has 2 very good 220 leads. Other than that, I mean, you could run him on Pure Saiyans on like a 170 lead if possible, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, but there's too many good options. So in terms of the few categories he does have, 4 with Gifted Warriors being the next one, he does have some very good current and relevant 220 leads. I think overall, as a Super EZA, he's not bad. I think he's quite solid. I don't think you get anything special from him, though. However, I do like the fact, even though it is a little bit shaky to set up, he does have that team coverage with the full heal. But do let me know your thoughts of Broly down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care, have a great day, and peace.